Thor, Love and Thunder, where the only way to spoil your enjoyment of it is to actually watch the thing. This is a movie with no hook to get you through it. There's very little story, there's very little action, and it's supposed to be a comedy film. Although you wouldn't know that from the cinema I was in. It got 2 laughs throughout the entire movie. And I mean cumulatively. Both of them came from one person. Chris Hemsworth said that Thor Love and Thunder is a movie that a 7-year-old would make. And I think that is the age demographic for the comedy as well. In fact, even having said that, if I had a 7-year-old and he thought this movie was funny, then I would very quickly go and show him a load of actually decent comedies. Because if he thought the stuff in this movie were jokes, then clearly I haven't given him enough exposure to an actual quality bar to compare it against. When you've got things like Coupling, Black Books, The IT Crowd, Blackadder, and then you compare it to this movie, where a joke is supposed to be that a goat screams. The humour, like everything else in this movie, is very one-dimensional and simply relies on the lol-so-random aspect of humanity. In fact, Hemsworth said that Waititi would say, I want to do this, I want to try this, and everything he suggested, I just said yes to. And after seeing the movie, I don't think he should have done. If a guy keeps presenting you with terrible ideas, it kind of is your job to go, no, you shouldn't do that. This is awful. What are you doing? And I do think part of the responsibility for that falls on Chris Hemsworth's shoulders when his character of Thor is the biggest joke of the movie. This is someone who's humiliated throughout the entire piece until right at the very end, just like all of his other recent movies.
It's hugely imaginative.
Now for the video, I'm keeping it non-spoilers. If I do a spoiler section at the end, I'll give you a lot of warning. But I don't really think there is that much to spoil. The plot is simultaneously incredibly basic, incredibly simple, and also entirely nonsensical. The more you think about it, the less sense it makes. And it didn't make much sense to begin with. So what other hooks are there? Well, there's action. I like action. And yet, for the entire movie, I may have liked maybe 60 seconds of the action. There isn't much action in it to begin with, but a lot of what is in it is ruined by both terrible music choices and also the supposed comedy. The parts of the action that I did like was when Thor seemed powerful, when it was taken seriously, where there was some kind of stakes. It's just those moments were very few and far between. I enjoyed those pieces, but they were there for literally seconds at a time, and then immediately undercut by something I didn't like. Generally, the humor. And then you've got other action sequences where they just weren't taken seriously, and they were played to soundtracks which really didn't belong. Music in a movie should be there to set emotion, to set the tone of the piece, and it didn't seem like whoever chose the music had any idea what they were doing in that department. And even if you replace the music, that action scene still would have been undercut by what was surrounding it. This entire attitude that nothing in the movie matters means that none of the action feels like it does either. How am I supposed to care about a fight which was immediately preceded by Taika Waititi doing a Korg voice?
Yes, they are. They also scream quite a lot.
Which I didn't mind in the previous movies, but by the end of this movie, I simply came to despise. There's a narration at the end, which he does, which not only made me roll my eyes, but I was praying for the movie to end, and then that kicked off, and anything that I could have liked about the finale was ruined by Korg's narration, which only seems to even exist in the movie because it's Waititi's movie and he wanted to appear in it. He was barely in the other movies, whereas in this, he's through the entire thing, and I don't know why his character exists. Speaking of characters that shouldn't exist, I don't know why King, who shall now be known as Queen Valkyrie from this point onwards, even existed in the movie either. Both of those people just kind of followed them around and had scenes which felt like they should have been cut. They were entirely unrelated to the plot, and when they were put into the plot, they ruin them. There are moments of serious scenes which will then just cut back to them doing karaoke. Like, what is this supposed to be? Why is this even here?
It's hugely imaginative.
And the blame for this all seems to fall on Taika Waititi, because there was an original 4-hour cut, which Game Rant says is extra funny, but considering I've seen the humour that they left in, I'd hate to see the humour that they kept out, because Waititi himself said it's full of big, dumb scenes that pretty much gave up on the film's story, and the ones they kept in also did the same. It's like 2 separate movies. You've got stuff which is happening, which all contributes to the actual film, and then you've got these extra tacked-on scenes which only seem to be filmed because Waititi thought they were fun. With Hemsworth saying that the 4-hour cut was like a Monty Python sketch, and that he pretty much sacrificed the story for jokes. And yet that's still how I feel about the actual movie.
Taika, he's like a big kid.
And I have to think that given their interviews, they know that what they made isn't very good. When Waititi is saying a lot of the time on set, you're filming it and you're like, this is the greatest thing that anyone's ever filmed in the history of filming things. And then you get to the edit and you're like, I'd still kind of like it. But after 6 months of it being in the movie, you realize that it was fun on the day, but it doesn't have any business being in the movie. This is a guy who made a movie and then 6 months later realized that the stuff he'd filmed was awful. But you've still got to make a movie out of it. So what you end up with is a movie which humiliates Thor, and any scene which should be serious, and they attempt to be serious because there are some serious topics in this, immediately just have to be squashed into as small a time as possible so they can get back to the jokes. And I hate calling them jokes or comedy, because they're not.
Giant goats! Kids, get your popcorn now.
I don't think there are any jokes or comedy moments in this. It's just what Waititi intends to be comedy. If your idea of funny is just, this is absurd, this doesn't belong here, then you may like it, I don't know. But for me, I'm kind of expecting something a little bit deeper. But one thing that this movie does do is prove that if you thought that Obi-Wan Kenobi would have been good if it was a movie, well, we can disprove that right now. Because Thor is a movie with a budget as much as you want to do, and it was still filmed in the volume, and really doesn't look like it's real. I'm not that fussed about CGI, as long as it's not so bad that it pulls me out of the movie. I like to be immersed in something and absorbed in it. And yet in this, I keep thinking, these people aren't in this scene, they're so separated from the background, I don't know why, but it just looks weird all of the time. It doesn't look like they're there. And it's because of the way it's filmed. Nearly all of this is not on a green screen, but it's filmed on the projection onto the background technology that they've developed, which was the same thing that they used in Obi-Wan. It makes you realize why all of Star Wars just seems to be put on Tatooine now, because a desert seems to be the only thing that technology can do, which is even reasonably realistic. And the film itself, when it comes to the plot, is basically just, let's move on to the next scene. The plot is almost non-existent. Here's a bad guy, he's doing a bad thing, let's go and stop him. And everything else in there is simply to get you to the next scene. And there are some scenes where you're like, we didn't even achieve anything there, why does that even exist? And I wouldn't even be against that if you then decided, well, we're not going to do a film with some complex plot, so we're simply going to make an action movie. If you had a serious Thor action movie where all he did was go around beating the crap out of people, and you dropped all of the Taika Waititi nonsense, then that's a movie I could have enjoyed. Instead, the movie seems like a parody of itself. This is something which, yes, relies on absurdity to be lol so random for humor, but it just parodies its own characters. It takes the piss out of its own characters, and they don't seem to be able to do anything properly.
Well then, if it's color we need, let's bring the rainbow.
Was that a catchphrase or something? How many catchphrases have there been?
A lot.
There's the scene which I'm sure everyone's seen in the trailers where they go to a city of gods, and the only reason that scene seems to exist is that so you can see Chris Hemsworth's arse, and that's not gonna get me in the cinema. So for a movie that parodies itself, humiliates its characters, has CGI so bad that it pulls you out of the movie and reminds you that you're watching a movie, and a plot which is simultaneously so simple and doesn't make sense, you have to ask, what is the primary emotion when watching this movie? And for me, it was boredom. And that is the worst thing that I can ever say about a movie, that I'm bored. I would rather take nonsensical, horrible writing that annoyed me and made me angry, but didn't bore me, than one that did. At least something which is offensively awful can give my brain something to tick over with, but boredom, my brain switches off, I can't think, and I just want everything to desperately end. And that was my single emotion going through this movie. I just wanted it to end.
It's hugely imaginative.
I think the biggest insult you can give a movie is when you start looking at your watch to see how much time is left. And yet when the movie ends and you get another scene and you just, oh no, I can't believe this is still going on, it means that you have severely messed up. The glimpses of the movie that could have been good were few and far between. And the ones that were was where Thor was fighting and there was stakes, where it meant something, where it took it seriously and the character seriously. And all of that is just surrounded in stuff which drags it down. And if Taika Waititi is the man with a brain of a 70-year-old who for some reason likes this kind of comedy, then the fault of the movie rests solely on his shoulders, because that is what destroys the movie more than anything else, more than any other concern that someone might have.
Tiger, he's like a big kid.
And if that comedy is up your streets, then you'll like the movie, but if it isn't, then there really isn't anything else to keep you watching. And I think some of the reviewers said it best when they said Waititi is having a lot of fun with this, it's just that the viewer isn't. Or my personal favourite, Thor 4 is the worst Marvel movie because it's not a movie, it's content. Just like Obi-Wan Kenobi, this movie exists because they had to make something, and no one really cared about it. If anyone cared about this, they would have been looking over Waititi's shoulder and told him that none of this is good. The fact that Waititi is so unhappy with what he actually created that he wouldn't want to go over all of the footage they shot again really says a lot about even his opinion of his own work, as that's the excuse he uses for why they couldn't pull off a proper director's cut. Trust me, after the movie being this long, nobody wants a longer version of it. The way they described the filming of the movie was that they just had a lot of fun filming a load of scenes, and then at the end tried to assemble a film from it. And that's how it feels. You go scene, 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 end. And how we get from one place to another is just entirely arbitrary at best. This is simply an arbitrary collection of sketches which they think are funny, and really aren't. And if that's the kind of movie that you're interested in, then, hey, go and see Thor at the movies. And if you do after seeing this, then hey, don't come complaining to me that it's awful. I already know. But for now, that's it from me. If you like the video, press like, subscribe more videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.